afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Alliance of Independent Agencies and our chain interview series. This is the opportunity where our members get a chance to interview each other, primarily on the basis of we see other people within the Alliance with whom we would be interested to work with, collaborate, share information. For those of you who are lucky enough to be watching our last one where the Elephant Room interviewed Jackanory, Lucy Gillions, CEO of Jackanory, picked on Stuart Bradbury from Avantgarde as the person with whom she'd like to talk to. So I'm just going to hand over to Lucy and let's all enjoy two colleagues talking to each other about what's going on in their industry. So over to you, Lucy.
Great, thanks, Guy. So I kind of wanted to start with probably you might be wondering why I picked Stuart. There's a combination of reasons. A, we're in the same field generally, but B, I have a personal interest in the fact that many moons ago I actually interviewed at Avantgarde. So it's an agency that I've always loved and I was always really intrigued to work with. I mean, my first question might be why you didn't recruit me, but we'll avoid that one. But on a genuine level, I've always been fascinated by all of the work you've done. For me, when I was, I'm going to say little now, sounds like I was 2. When I was younger, it was really big stuff, which for me was not what I'd seen, particularly in Experiential. I'd seen very classic road shows. I'd seen the classic handout stuff at the stations. And it was something I loved and thought I'd be interested in. And it was a way that my role developed within my agency. But you guys were quite daring. It was quite out there. It was quite significant for the experiential world. And it was somewhere that I really aspired to be because it appeared to be very, very different to the traditional for me. And that's why, obviously, I have a personal interest, but I also genuinely do love the work that you guys do. So I guess to start with, I would just love to know your involvement, how you started with Avantgarde, why you started with it and how it evolved from your side.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Well, as Clive said, thanks for picking on me, Lucy. So let me give you a bit of, I suppose, background as to Avantgarde and my involvement. So, I mean, Avantgarde, we've been going since 1985 and we've kind of grown organically over the years. Now about 850 sort of experts, employees in 12 different offices, and we probably operate in over 40 different markets. Head office is in Munich, but about 12 years ago, blimey, it's so long ago, I was kind of looking at doing my own thing and set up my own agency. And a guy that I knew said, well, there's this opportunity for Avantgarde London, which they've actually tried to sort of create an agency in this market. Would you be interested? And I said, well, yeah, I'll be interested. So I went over to Munich and met the founder, and I knew of them, and we got on very well, and there was a lot of synergy, and the sort of culture of the agency was very much something that I sort of inspiring to create for myself. So yeah, it kind of started from then. And I suppose 2 weeks later, I found myself in a little room in Hammersmith, my sort of black book, and thought, right, better get going then. And it's kind of gone from there. I mean, my background is that I've always been in marketing, and well, I studied sort of industrial engineering, and I kind of realized when I was doing that degree that I was never going to be an amazing designer, but we sort of also had a whole sort of module in new product development. So I kind of got really into that side of the business and or that side of the degree. And so marketing was some sort of area that I started to sort of express more of an interest. And then when I graduated, I got a job, and then started working for MG Cars, and And I started working alongside some agencies, and I thought, those guys are cool, really want to work for an agency. They're working across so many different brands, and so I started applying to different agencies and got a job working for an advertising agency, and it kind of went from there. And within that agency, we were sort of doing, I mean, this is going back quite a few years ago now, but they were delivering some events and road shows, and I really enjoyed that part of it. And then fortunately started working for an agency which is now part of the Wasserman Group, and yeah, worked on some really exciting, cool events, you know, motorsport, a lot of big music events, and that's where the interest came from, really. And like I said, was looking at doing my own thing, and then got introduced to the Avantgarde guys in Munich, and yeah, started off in this little room in Hammersmith. So that's me, really. Yeah, that was 12 years ago now, I think, 12, 13 years ago.
Amazing. And I guess, so, because you've got quite a car heritage in terms of as an agent, haven't you? There's lots of car brands. Where did that come from, or how has it been?
I think that really, yeah, I mean, that kind of comes from, I suppose, our sort of German heritage, and yeah, important probably point to mention is how Avantgarde really came about. So Martin, who's the founder, he basically was at university, and then through a friendship of his started creating these sort of fashion events, and they basically, there were fashion shows for sort of up and coming designers, and they were very, very creative of their time, and they were called Avantgarde, and they had a huge success, and brands such as sort of Mini and BMW and Mercedes started to pay a little bit of attention to them and wanted to partner with those fashion shows. And so it kind of started from there, really. So he then started working with those automotive brands, and then got into sort of launches and road shows and exhibitions for them. So that's really, I think, where our sort of automotive heritage sort of comes from. And yeah, we do have a strong sort of understanding of that sector, and have done a lot of work within the automotive sector over the years.
Cool. And I guess one of the, you know, $1 million questions is the last year that has happened. And one of the things I was thinking about for you guys, which is always a massive appeal, is the fact that you obviously are worldwide. So there are offices across various countries. But that in itself must have been a hell of a challenge for the last year. Has that been more challenge, would you say? Or does it work that you are I mean, because obviously you're one team effectively, but is it very much about looking after your own country? Or how have you navigated that from a coronavirus pandemic point of view?
It's a good question. I mean, we've always considered ourselves as one agency with a good geographical spread. So, you know, we share best practice, but importantly, we do have employees that move from office to office and gain experience that way. And obviously, you know, we couldn't do that during the sort of pandemic period. But, you know, what it did was it really sort of brought us even closer together, I think, funnily enough, because even though we couldn't travel, obviously using things like Zoom and Teams, etc., really brought us closer together, but we're all sort of like having, you know, across the world, different lockdown periods and sort of different restrictions and so forth. And so actually we learned a lot from each other, depending on where you were in that journey of the pandemic. But it really demonstrated the kind of culture that we had or have within Avantgarde, is that sort of one agency sort of approach. So it really felt like, actually, yes, we're a big group with lots of employees, but it really brought us in even closer together. And, you know, so whereas in the past we might meet, you know, face to face on a sort of regular basis, we were meeting through a sort of Teams call or Zoom calls, or doing broadcasts together much more frequently. And so actually you really felt like you're part of the sort of Avantgarde family, which was great. And just learning from each other, but also, you know, sharing sort of concerns and, how do you deal with this? And what are you doing to try and change the sort of relationship that you have with that client, which might have been traditionally just in exhibitions? And how have you done that? And what else are you doing for them? So there were a lot of sort of key learnings that we were able to share across the different markets.
And I guess country by country, you must have had to react in different ways in terms of how one would pivot to, you know, more hybrid events or virtual or however it might be. And I presume during different times, some countries allowed events, some didn't, etc., etc., etc. So it must have been quite a sort of a hell of a journey.
Yeah, it was, and you know, we were in a kind of fortunate position that Avantgarde had invested a lot into sort of digital capabilities many years ago. I say many years ago, but quite a few years ago. And so actually, that sort of pivoting, and everyone has been using that word, into the sort of virtual experiences and virtual events was something that we were able to do quite effectively, quite quickly, because we'd been creating a lot of sort of VR and AR platforms already. We'd been creating our own sort of what we call a digital companion, which is a sort of platform that you access on your mobile device. And we'd also been, you know, we've got a, you know, we've delivered sort of hybrid experiences in the past as well. So we were able to sort of pivot pretty quickly and demonstrate to clients very early on what else they could be doing in that sort of world of sort of virtual and hybrid, when the sort of restrictions started to relax a bit more. And then from there, we also created our own virtual event platform called Vite. And we were able to use that across the different markets. And, you know, and that's been really, really good, because, you know, there's a lot of sort of off the shelf platforms such as Hopin, et cetera, but they tend to be sort of quite restrictive in what they do. So, and we all know this, you know, you and I know this well, that not every experience is the same. So clients have different needs, they have different ways of communicating, they want to create a different and unique experience. So we've created a platform, like I said, called Vite, that allows us to do that. So that works really well for us, and we were able to use that in these sort of other international markets.
So that's what I was going to, I think that's really interesting. And as I say, I know you and I particularly had a conversation about how to change from traditional a few months ago. So did you have anything that came about from this sort of change that you guys were so proud of over this year? So in terms of a piece of work that probably was unexpected, or do you know, that came to you out of almost the pandemic? You can say no, because we definitely didn't. So it's not putting you on the spot question.
Yeah, I mean, we did win, you know, we did win some new client relationships. We built on some existing. But there were certainly a few clients which, you know, we hadn't worked with before, that we were able to start working with because of, you know, our sort of experience in delivering sort of virtual experiences. So that was really positive. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that it wasn't challenging. It was, you know, it had been, you know, it was a very challenging period. You know, there were quite a few clients who, you know, used us in a particular sort of way, or had done for many years, and when the pandemic hit, they sort of closed their doors, you know, and they weren't going to, you know, spend on their marketing. So that, you know, it wasn't all sort of roses. It was, you know, there were some challenging times throughout that sort of, I suppose, that sort of 18-month period, but there were new clients that we were able to work with as well. So it kind of, yeah, balanced out a bit, really.
How are you feeling about it now? How are you feeling about the other end?
I mean, positive. I mean, I think our industry, I'll be honest with you, I mean, I think our industry needed a bit of a kick in the arse anyway. You know, I think not just from the agency side, but I think also clients needed to sort of address how to do things differently. And that wouldn't have wished what we've all been through on anyone. And but in terms of sort of our sector, I think it needed to sort of evolve anyway. And I think there was a need to sort of look at how do you create an experience, or how do you communicate to an audience, or how do you reach out to a new potential customer, and to do it and think about doing it in a different way. And I think it forced that, to happen a lot quicker. So, we often talk about, the sort of digital world coming on, vastly more, I suppose, efficiently or quickly, within that sort of period than it would have taken probably 5 or 6 years. And that really did happen, I believe. And, it got us all thinking about, right, okay, so we can't do what we used to be able to do. So how are we going to be able to do that differently? But what can we still do to create a really engaging experience? And that was really interesting. And I think from there, how the industry has now started to really push and evolve. And I think it's also demonstrated, how our sector in the world of, say, brand experience has that capability of evolving and adapting. And, and I've been really proud of our sector of how, we've been able to sort of take on that challenge where, the sort of bread and butter of what we normally do during that period, we couldn't do it, and how we had to evolve. And I think we proved that we can evolve very quickly. And I think there were some great things that have come out of it. And the whole world of sort of hybrid or blended experiences, or however you want to call it, is an interesting one. And, I think that's there to stay. I think there's still clients that are still trying to find their feet in that world and trying to get the balance between how do you create something that sort of works virtually but also works physically, and how do you make sure that you're not isolating one of the audiences or who you're targeting, so it's quite an interesting area.
And I think that's, and this, we've spoken about this, that's where I struggle, because I struggle with virtual in the sense of being able to create a cracking experience from a sensorial point of view, from a passion point of view, from an exciting point of view. But I'm with you on that. I think it's here to stay, and I think that's a really interesting challenge for our sector. But what I think is also really interesting is that I truly believe the desire and the passion for events again is tenfold, and that's where I think it's really exciting. And I think it's above and beyond even sort of before, everyone loved experiences, everyone loved doing things. But I think the fact that we've sort of like lost our freedom for 18 months, I think people are treasuring it like they've never done before. And I think people are really, really understanding how important it is to experience things, to I think through the pandemic, they probably created relationships with brands that they didn't necessarily know they were going to. That sounds a bit, I'm not sure I can say this, wanky to say that. But I mean, from a point of view of, there are brands that you relied on through the pandemic that kind of got you through the pandemic. And I think people are really beginning to understand what relationships are with those brands. And I think more and more, what's lovely for our industry is for the first time in a long time, I think we can show kindness. We can show, moments of sort of specialness and things like that, which I don't think many disciplines, I mean, that's not fair to say, but I think it's easier for us to demonstrate that generally. And I think what I really like is that it's a lot of a kinder world, and I think that the sort of experience and the stuff that we're looking at the moment can only be better for that. I think, I don't know whether you agree, but I think
I totally agree with you. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're social animals, aren't we? And it's so important to be able to be in environments with fellow colleagues, friends, family, etc., etc. And I think, we all really, really missed that. And so actually when things started to relax and sort of we could go out and we could create live events and we could sort of create these experiences that people could go to. Yeah, absolutely. It's been wonderful to see that, these sort of doors have reopened and everyone's sort of flooding to sort of to get there. I think what I hope though is that we've learned, and I think you're right, in terms of sort of being kinder, being more understanding, and I think I hope that we don't fall back into our sort of bad old habits, but so far so good, and I think there is a much more, I suppose, compassion and understanding is really important. And I think that's also, I mean, I suppose it's a good sort of link in terms of how the workplace has changed as well, and it's never been more important to actually create a culture within your sort of working environment, where people want to come into the office, into the agency, into the space that you created, having that culture. And we've all proved that using Teams and Zoom and stuff has worked, and that has been obviously very, very useful when we haven't been able to sort of travel or get into the office. But now that we can, having that sort of flexibility of being able to sort of come in certain days but also work from home in other days has, again, that's changed the way that we work. But I think it's important that actually you have to then, as a business leader or business owner, that you create the right environment to encourage people to sort of come back in, and that it is an environment that they want to spend time in.
That's one of my things as well, particularly. I mean, I'm sick of my own company. And I think from a point of view of, encouraging creativity and things like that. And that's what I was going to ask you guys about, sort of, for Avantgarde, what makes your team tick, in the sense of how do you try and promote that? Because I think you're right. I actually think we've got a challenge on our hands to get people back in, because we can prove that, we've proved that we can work from home, and the flexibility is what's key. Yeah. But I do think I think there are pros and cons of all of it, because I think sitting around a table and chatting and going through experiences and is really, really positive. And I think you can't get that from home. Yes, you can talk to people on Zoom. Yes, you can, but there's nothing better than, or even just going to the pub, going out for a drink, all those things which create much more of a creative culture, I would say. So what do you guys do to encourage that, and how are you navigating it, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's certain roles within the agency that struggle to sort of function effectively when it's all done over a Teams meeting or a Zoom call. Specifically around the sort of creative and design teams and stuff. You can't replicate in the same way that sort of energy and that passion that you get from being in a room together. And interesting enough, when we opened the doors to the office, and we were able to do that, I encouraged that pretty quickly. That it was my sort of creative colleagues who were really the first who wanted to kind of get back, and you could, so I don't think that you can replicate that sort of that passion and creativity, as I just said, by doing it sort of remotely. I think there are certain roles which can function effectively remotely, but again, it comes down to the individual. And I think there's also a bit of a warning around just using sort of like communication through laptops, was where I think people can also hide behind a laptop for the wrong reasons. And when I mean hide, I mean the fact that actually they might not be going through a good time. They might be struggling, but actually it's very difficult as someone who has a duty of care for their employees to always notice that if they are on a screen, because you can hide behind that a bit and they might not be feeling it. And I think that's where there is a sort of something to watch out for. And whereas if you're in the office environment, it's a lot easier to pick up on those kind of vibes and that sort of, those that someone might be going through a sort of difficult patch or might be finding something hard. And I think it's easier to do that when you see someone face to face or you're in the same environment. It's not as easy as always to pick up on it if they're, sitting, in front of their laptop.
I think that's really fair, and I think there's been obviously massive debates over mental health over the last few years and everything. So I think that is sort of incredibly important. And I think going forward, it's really important to think about, as you say, how we navigate the next few years, because I think as an industry, we're going to continuously evolve. I hope in the right way, as you said. I think there's a fine line to going back to the classics, and I really hope that we have learned. And I think, though, to your point, as you mentioned earlier, I truly believe that as leaders of our agencies, and also I think clients as well, we have changed. So therefore, I don't necessarily know that I would sit back and take certain things again? You know, I don't know, because I've learned to be different and learned to sort of work differently. I think I would challenge stronger. I'm going to say those famous last words, but I do think I would. And I think that's really interesting from a sort of growth point of view. So, I mean, for us in particular, you know, we're looking at ways at the moment of how we're going to navigate the next 3 years. And I don't know where you guys are at and what you're thinking for sort of the immediate, you know, have you got a short term and a long term? I guess you have, or sort of what you're thinking for the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's, for us as an agency, and we're talking about, you know, the group as a whole, there's certain sort of key areas. I mean, we class ourselves as an experience agency, and that hasn't come across already. And, you know, within that, there are many different sort of areas of sort of expertise which we're sort of building on. I mean, we have a social department, but we're building on that, building our sort of social capabilities. But we've also been developing and creating our own sort of experience platforms as well, such as we've just recently launched our own retail store called The Latest in Berlin, which is for sort of up and coming tech brands who wouldn't normally get a sort of high street presence. And we've created this store, which we're the leaseholders, we do the design, the fit out, we manage it, we do all this sort of ATL, or the out of home, all the social, and it gives it a platform for these sort of up and coming sort of tech product brands to actually be able to sort of exhibit and sell their products. And we're now, through the success of the one that we've just launched in Berlin, we're now creating one, or will be creating one in London. So yeah, watch this space on that. So,
or what do you buy? Do you buy the whole thing, or do you sort of?
So we basically, yes. Yeah, so I mean, we've created the whole brand. We've leased the whole, you know, we leased the store, and it's literally we're the masters of our own retail store.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Sorry,
you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. No, I was just saying that's awesome, to be fair. And I was just saying, is that is that kind of, you're going to roll it out globally, or are you thinking it's just a test and learn, or is it a?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's we started it in Berlin. It's the first store, and that's been hugely successful. And we're now going to be doing the same in London in the next sort of few months. And then we've got plans to. We've got plans to sort of launch it in sort of Asia and other key markets as well. So that's just one thing that we're creating. I mean, retail has been a big part of Avantgarde as well. You know, we've created and managed a lot of stores, pop-up experiences over the years, and so I think retail is an area that we're certainly also focusing on. So yeah, digital tech, social, retail is definitely an area, and there's some others which we're also investigating, all under the sort of banner of experiences. Yeah,
that's amazing. That's really exciting.
I'll invite you. As soon as we launch it, you'll be the first to know.
Well, after you didn't recruit me, I mean, you know, I deserve something. So to be fair. I am joking. My other question, actually, to be fair, was about you as well, and what makes you tick. Like when you're not creating amazing retail platforms and things going global.
What makes me tick? Well, I mean, first of all, my family. You know, I've got an adorable 3-year-old boy who keeps me on my toes. And you know, spending as much time with him. I mean, and actually, you know, going back to your point, you know, how we've kind of changed ourselves. I think we're all been trying to find that sort of work-life balance a bit better. You know, our industry, as we know, has not been great for that in the past, and I think, you know, also the sort of, you know, that employing, you know, new people into our sector, you know, trying to get that, you know, there needs to be a better work-life balance, and I think we've all seen that as well, and that sort of flexibility of being able to sort of work at home and in the office, but also you know, having that opportunity to sort of spend more time with your family has become really important. So certainly spending more time with my family is something that makes me tick. I also realized that come by sort of Christmas just gone, that I was certainly putting on was it the Corona Stone? I could quite easily say the Corona Stones, and I thought I've got to do something about this. So yeah, so at Christmas I said, right, okay, got to change my lifestyle here. And so I've always been quite sporty, but I sort of upped that and yeah, changed my diet to become a vegan. So so I've been keeping really, yeah. So I've been a veggie for years, but decided to go vegan and increase my running and really keeping fit. So I do all that before I start the day in the office, and I find that so really therapeutic. It really, you know, puts me in the right state of mind when I start work. I feel really energized from it, and I've found a lot of benefits from regular exercise and good diet. I'm not saying that I'll be able to keep it going for.
No,
you know,
but I'm smiling because I come to the middle class or middle age, I'm not quite sure which, of getting a Peloton as well. So we did exactly the same as you at Christmas. It was like, need to change stuff, need to go on with it, and I do it every day, same as you. And it's like, actually every morning, it sounds so stupid to say, but it does energize you, and it makes you, I guess, reevaluate a bit. Like you say, it was just something I never did, and it's just, it does make you think differently, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I was fortunate that, you know, I could cycle to the office from home, and so when our office is not too far from the city, so I was cycling in early in the morning, and I thought, well, I'll go for a run. And this is before all the sort of bankers and the finance people started flooding back to the city. And, you know, I just got for these lovely long runs around St. Paul's and stuff, and the streets were sort of empty. And it was just amazing. I've just kept that going really since then. But it's, you know, it's important, you know, and as you mentioned, in terms of sort of mental health, it's, you know, it's about keeping yourself, looking after yourself. It's so important, you know, and I think that is also something that hopefully we've all learned during the sort of pandemic, the importance of looking after yourself, both physically and mentally.
Well, and I think also will become massively important again for recruiting in the future. Like, I think, like you touched on, I think it's going to be a huge, I think there's all sorts of challenges for recruitment at the moment. Generally, one is just getting people. I think the second is what you can offer, because I think people have changed in what they want, how they are looking at their work and their life. And I guess also, you know, there is just lack of not talent people, I guess, at the moment. Like, I mean, you know, the fact that you can't get a taxi, you can't get staff in restaurants, you can't, I mean, it's insane that it's sort of, everything seems to be everything seems to have gone a bit nuts. So have you guys got any sort of, are you looking at recruiting? Have you got any thoughts on how that might, because I don't really, we're looking at developing a bit of a program or something of how we're going to do it, because I think, from a slightly scared point of view from where we've been, I think freelancers might be the way forward. But then you can't obviously offer as many benefits. So I'm really struggling with how to particularly navigate that path, I guess. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, I originally thought it was just, you know, the sort of marketing sector that was really struggling in the sort of area of recruitment, but it seems that it's, it's across many sectors. I think it comes back to, I think in terms of sort of like, so we use freelancers, have done in the past, and will continue to do that. And I think having that sort of, again, that sort of flexibility, but also now that we can work in a much more flexible way, I think that also suits the sort of freelancer sort of model as well. I always sort of worry a little bit about, you know, the importance, like we know, of an agency is its culture, and making sure that, you know, we maintain that sort of positive culture throughout. So I think it comes down to, I think finding the talent is not easy, and I don't think I've got a sort of one way or one golden way of doing it. I think it's, you know, we've got some good recruitment partners that we use on a regular basis. I think it's important to sort of in that sort of recruitment process is really demonstrate, not just obviously the work that you're doing, but the culture, the environment, the people, the vibe that you have within the agency, the benefits that you can offer, the sort of, I suppose, the sort of long-term sort of plan that you want to sort of build around the sort of employee, depending on what role that they're, what level they're coming in at. And I think, it's not easy. It's finding the right talent with the right experience is, I think, it's proving hard for many of us. And I'd like to think that will change over a period of time, but I think it does come down to the fact that people have readdressed what is it that they want to do with their lives, and this goes across not our sector, across many sectors, and I think it comes down to really being able to sort of offer them the right environment, the right culture to come and work in, and demonstrating that you as a business, yes, of course, a business has to be profitable, otherwise we wouldn't exist, but the importance of its employees and its welfare of those employees and those team members.
Yeah. And I've got probably just about 2 more questions.
Sure.
What would you advise anyone now looking at sort of our industry in terms of client side? I mean, in terms of what they should think about when it comes to experiential? Is it being brave? Is it being more considered? Is it being, obviously we want them to spend millions of pounds, clearly. But I was trying to think about this the other day, and I think it's probably just for them thinking a bit different, as opposed to the classic, I need to sell 4 cars, or I need 4, I need to give out X number of products, or etc., etc. And I was trying to think about how, as a discipline and an industry, we could become a bit more, I guess, memorable, or a bit more like not the afterthought. And I was trying to think about the advice that I would give a client post everything, post the way I think the world has changed. And I didn't have the answer, by the way. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how our, talked about this earlier, about how our sector has evolved over the years. So not just in the sort of recent 18 months or 2 years, but how it has evolved over over a longer period of time. And I think I was actually talking to a candidate yesterday about this, where and I'm sort of generalizing here a bit, but when a marketing director is sort of looking at their marketing budget and they go, right, okay, I'm going to spend out of that marketing budget, 75% of it is going to go on media. We'll have 10% on the creative. We'll spend a bit on digital, and we've got a bit of loose change here. Maybe we should do a bit of experiential. Let's see what those guys can do. And I think we were always kind of considered as a sort of a little bit of an afterthought in the past. Where it has changed, and this is where I'm really, and I really mean this, what I'm really passionate about, is we are now starting to be considered for a sort of a seat at the higher table, at the sort of senior table, where actually over the years we've been able to demonstrate that experiences can be the center of that sort of marketing initiative. And from there, yes, content is created, social amplification, digital, out of home, etc. But the experience itself is so, so important. And we know this from, TV platforms, or, like Netflix or Apple TV and stuff, is that one of the reasons why they're so popular is not just because the content is great, it's because you're not interrupted with TV ads. And we know that we're being bombarded all the time with, billboard messages and this, that, and the other, and it becomes wallpaper. Now, the benefit, and this is what I'm so passionate about and what we do, is that actually by creating an experience you're going to get a consumer or your target audience to engage with that. And as long as you are in the right location and you're delivering the right experience, the right motivation, the right message, the right excitement around it, those individuals will remember that and they'll share that experience with others. And that's what's so powerful about it. And now the fact that, and we've talked about this for years and years about how do you measure experiential. Well, you can measure it. It depends on what you want to measure, but there are lots of different ways of measuring the success of an experience and building the ROI around it. So that's not something ever to be sort of challenged. So I'm really, really passionate about the fact that actually our part of the world of marketing, in my eyes, is the most powerful. And I will really stand by that. It is the most powerful and it has the most success when you're wanting to target new customers, rebuild relationships with existing, establish long-term relationships. Because at the end of the day, we are all, aren't we? We're the sum of our own experiences, Now, most people on, say, Instagram, they're not necessarily, I'm not saying everyone, they're not necessarily about, look what I've just bought, look at my new watch, look at my new pair of whatever trainers. They're actually showing the experiences that they've done with their friends and their family. And that's what's important to people. So we are the sum of our experiences. And so actually we're in the world of creating those experiences. And how good is that? So you can tell I'm quite passionate about that.
No, I love it. You'd be the same as me. I love it. I'm like, hell yeah, yes.
More clients need to understand it though. But, I think where we...
I do think they're getting there. I do. And I think that, I actually think that even more so, they're actually realizing, of course, it's all about measurement. It still is. And it keeps giving that. But on the flip side, we're finding actually more and more that it's not that they're not wanting measurement, but they really are seeing the benefit of it above and beyond that. And they're not caring about the numbers, but they're not as much. They're more about, was it a fabulous experience? Is the social coverage good? Is the PR coverage good? Is the content created good? So therefore they've got the knock-on numbers. But the old school numbers of like, we had 45,000 people who walked through the door, 4 people who took a number, which was all very, you could then do an ROI calculation. You'd come down to That's not as relevant to them as much, I don't think, anymore. I mean, some it is. It depends how traditional you are. But I think it's they're looking at it much more holistically and much more from like you say, from a whole picture point of view, and actually understanding exactly what you said there. And I could not agree more about being the sum of your experiences. And I think that is so important to individual and also to a client. And I think they're coming down to it, which I think is amazing. So fingers crossed for a boom.
No, absolutely. And I think where also it's also evolved is the fact that we're able to demonstrate that strategically we can create ideas that are built on really robust, strong insights. And whereas maybe, and I'm talking years back, maybe showing my age, but it's sort of like long gone are the days of sort of, can you just design and build that? I think we can demonstrate through our sort of insightful strategic approach, where is the best way to reach and what is the best experience we can do and how are we going to actually target that particular audience. So so I think that, our industry is really well placed for the future. And on the measurement side as well, there are so many different ways of measuring the success. And we've actually also developed our own technology so that actually we can also measure people's emotions. So we can measure their emotions going in and out, but it's really, really accurate as well. And actually some of that scoring that we're able to apply to the experiences that we've created is really, really interesting. And it allows us to also develop and evolve and improve as we go along.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I feel positively uplifted and I feel like we are going to own the future, so it's fine.
Hey.
I think that was fabulous, and I say thank you. And I think for me, I've as I say, that covered everything I wanted to ask you, but I guess I have one final question I have to ask you, which is, what agency would you like to interview next and why?
Well, it has to be Wasserman, my old agency. When I worked for them, they were called Ignition. And so, yeah, definitely Chris Cicciarelli. I'll be picking on him for the next part. So, looking forward to chatting to Chris. Like I said, I worked with those guys 12 or 13 years ago. They were doing some fantastic work back then. They continued to do some amazing work in the world of sort of entertainment and sport and music. And Chris and Paul and Fred, you know, they're really passionate, really positive guys. And yeah, that's who I'm choosing.
Thank you very much indeed, Lucy and Stuart. I have to say that since you're both from the experiential industry, I think that was a fantastic exponent of how resilience has paid off for not only your agencies, but also for the industry at large, the experiential industry at large. And it made me ask, you know, I've got one more question for each of you. The Alliance is undertaking some research amongst the client community as to what characteristics do they believe separate independents from holdcos. So if they've got a mix of agencies, what would they ascribe to, which characteristics would they ascribe to independence? This way we're creating a language that CEOs like yourselves, when you're talking about being independent, you can talk about the language that client community uses about it. And so this research is going out, and it's balanced. It includes things like arrogance and disorganized, as well as things like credible, flexible, value for money, and so on. So just one question to each of you: which, to get to where you have done today, particularly over the last 18 months, which characteristic do you think best describes your agencies and has helped you get to where you have? Kind of in one word, ideally.
Do you want to go first?
Oh, Stuart.
No, Lucy, you please.
I would say for me, it's passion through and through.
Oh, that's a good one. I was going to say having an entrepreneurial spirit. I think. Yeah. I think as an independent, but also as an industry, I think having that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, I think has helped hugely. But passion, definitely. Yeah.
I think actually that, and I'm not just saying this to be sycophantic, that was my second thought, because I was like, it has to be, because you want to survive and you want to, you need to, and there's a reality of wanting to survive, but I don't think you want to survive unless you're passionate about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I believe that it has to be that you truly, truly believe in it. And I also, when I was interviewed last time, you guys saw that as well. I'm as passionate as you are. I truly believe in it. I think it's a fantastic discipline, a fantastic industry. And I think it can bring so much, not just, being flippant or funny or happy or whatever. It can, it's emotion. It can bring everything about it. And that is where I think it can do so much. So I think the passion and the determination behind it, I think, is really key.
I'm delighted that you said both of those, because they are on the list. So, so it's important, because we've asked through the CEO summits, we've asked to build up, and what they all said was, it's all very well us saying that, but we need it verified by the clients, which is why we're undertaking the research. So your thoughts are very much built into it. So against that, thank you very much indeed. It's really good time. We look forward next month for Stuart to be interviewing Chris, and I wish you all great fortune and a very good evening.
Thanks, Lucy. Good to see you. Yeah, good questions. Great questions. Yeah, great to see you.
And you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.